No matter how hard we try to prevent mistakes, it's almost inevitable that things will still sometimes come out wrong. Making a mistake does not necessarily mean you're practicing poorly, but how you respond to the mistake does make a huge difference in how productive your practice can be. There are several tempting options when a mistake occurs. The most natural may be simply to ignore it and keep going. When you're performing, this is often the best option, but when you're practicing, I would almost always recommend going back and dealing with the problem as soon as it occurs. One option that I see a lot from students is to fix the mistake and keep going. On the surface, this seems to be an improvement, but this can actually be a very dangerous habit to fall into because it doesn't really do anything to address the problem. Let me illustrate this with a scale. The standard C major scale fingering is to play 1, 2, 3, then cross the thumb under. If instead I play 1, 2, 3, 4, and then realize I've used the wrong fingering, I might be tempted to stop there, switch to the thumb, and keep going. But it isn't so much that putting the thumb on F is difficult, it's remembering to put the thumb on F in the context of the whole scale. Even if I switch to the thumb before going on, all I've actually practiced is playing it wrong, fixing it, and continuing. Chances are, if this is what I do when I practice, this is also what will come out when I perform. Practicing like this leads to performances that are riddled with continuity issues, but it feels so innocuous that many people practice this way without even realizing that's what they're doing. Anytime I make a mistake when practicing, I try to go back and start a little before the mistake happened. In the C major scale, even just going back to the C gives me the chance to practice remembering when the thumb crossing is actually supposed to happen. If I've done it wrong once, I'll usually try to do it at least 2 to 3 times right to make up for the one time I did it wrong. One danger to avoid is the temptation to rush back into the passage without making a plan to improve your chances of playing it correctly. It's very human to get frustrated because of the mistake and jump back in at a faster tempo. But if you already made a mistake going slower, it's even more likely that you'll make a mistake when you go faster, especially if you're feeling frustrated. Instead, if anything, I'd recommend slowing down the tempo and giving yourself more time to think. The longer I play piano, the more I realize that most mistakes are not flukes. It may seem like a random error, but there's almost always some logic to why the mistake happened. Sometimes it could be that there's a similar passage somewhere else, and they're getting mixed up in your mind. For example, the standard scale fingering for F major does start with 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the thumb crossing. So if I've been practicing my F major scales a lot, I might accidentally play 1, 2, 3, 4 when I go back to the C major scale. Rather than assuming this was just a random mistake, taking a second to understand where the mistake came from often gives a deeper understanding of both passages and makes it easier to prevent the same mistake from occurring next time. Anytime I make a mistake, I try to understand what caused it. Sometimes it's difficult to figure out exactly what went wrong. You may play through a passage, know something was wrong, but not be quite sure where it actually fell apart. When this happens, I typically slow way down and try to track down the mistake. Even if the same mistake doesn't happen again, I might find something that feels just a bit unclear in my mind, and that directs my attention to what needs to be improved. The longer I work on a piece of music, the more picky I get with what I classify as a mistake. At first, I might only stop and go back if I've played a wrong note or rhythm, but later on I'll also stop and go back for pickier things, such as seemingly random accents, which, by the way, are rarely actually random, dynamics that aren't quite what I wanted, or even something that felt just a bit shaky or uncertain, even if I didn't actually play anything wrong. In short, anything that's not exactly how I wanted it to go. I don't think anything I've talked about here is particularly revolutionary, but applying these strategies does take a lot of practice and self-discipline. It's often tempting just to excuse a mistake as minor, or say, well, it was close, or I knew what I meant to play, so I'll probably remember next time. In the long run, though, the fewer mistakes you let yourself get by with, the fewer mistakes you'll make, period. And if you take every mistake as a learning opportunity rather than ignoring it, you'll end up understanding your music much better as well.